People settle down. We relax when there's plenty. There's plenty, and it doesn't feel like it's not greed. It's not overwhelming. It's abundance, and in the best way. So that's really at the very heart of what plenty is. It's like a tree trunk, the bookshop, with lots of limbs, but this idea, the soil that it sits in, is plenty. It's really rich, and it's this idea of serving everybody.
Hi, and welcome to the Ordinary Brave podcast. We are so glad that you joined us today. I have an amazing guest, Lisa Urick. I met her a couple of years ago, I think, for the first time, and then over this past year, I've gotten to know her a whole lot more. And if you live in Cookeville, you probably know who she is too. I'm so excited for her to just come today and share some of the exciting projects that she's involved in. So, Lisa, thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's an honor to be here. I'm really admiring what you're doing in our community right now and how you take the time to learn from everybody and to listen, and this podcast is an extension of that, and I just really appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I'm really loving it. I have just met some amazing people doing this podcast. There are people that live in our town that have incredible stories, or they're involved in incredible things just like you. And that's really kind of how this all developed, is I thought, man, I want an avenue to share all these stories.
Yeah.
And so thank you. I appreciate that. And I just love meeting everybody and talking. But why don't you tell us a little bit about you? How did you end up in Cookeville? Were you born and raised here? Did you move here?
Well, okay. I was born in Cookeville Regional Hospital. So I was born here. My family's from Baxter, and so this is home, and I've moved around some, but this is where I returned. And I am, I'm not just me. I'm part of a duo. It's kind of like, I loved hearing Shania Twain sing, but I was like, she's a duo. Mutt Lange was singing with her all the time. And you rarely see one. You see one person, but really there's two. So my husband and I, Dave and I, are we set out that we wanted to be kind of like Charles and Ray Ames, who did the chairs, and build a Sagrada Familia like the big Gaudi did in Barcelona. So Dave and I are kind of think of ourselves as the Uricks, if you will.
Yeah.
And in a society that really celebrates individual influence and contribution, I think we forget about the power of partnership and the power that it's rare to see one person doing anything, but it's really about partnership. So it's hard to see me without seeing us, if that makes sense.
That's sweet. I like that.
And it's powerful. It's a really amazing thing what can happen when you get two aligned people. I think that's the power of a council or of anybody. When you get alignment, you can do a lot more. And so we are very blessed. We feel very excited to get to do all the things that we're getting to do. We have a manufacturing company called Franklin Fixtures that you visited.
I toured it. It's awesome.
And we make bookshelves and for libraries and bookshops and small shops across the country. Lots of people who are wanting to do things. Yeah.
So I recently heard a rumor that you guys were in a movie, or your shelves were in a movie.
Yeah, that's the truth. So, and that in fact, we were looking to bring jobs to this community, Dave and I were, and as an economic lift, because at the time, 2014, we were desperately in need of jobs. We had 7 people for every 1 job. So our goal was to find a business that would benefit from relocation. We found Franklin Fixtures in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and fell in love because we discovered that they had made the shelves for the movie You've Got Mail. So the iconic movie with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, and it's about a little bookshop that gets kind of overshadowed by the Big Fox books across the way, which is not the true story. The true story is that, we made a bookshop that Nora Ephron loved, and our Franklin did, in New York, called what's it called? Again, it's Peter Glassman's store, but she loved that store, and we replicated it, and it has actually grown, 11 times in the last 20 years. So what's happening with these small shops across America? I call them the quiet carpenters, because we have people who in their communities are trying to build community space, trying to build space for families and for friends and for people of all, all interests and ideologies. And it's really exciting to be part of that work. So we get to feed that work, and we get to do it in a way that also helps people. We work with a lot of folks who are justice involved and coming through that and rebuilding their lives. And that's really an exciting
Giving them
thing.
opportunity, yes.
And we have a second manufacturing operation that makes wood garage doors in the same. So we have Franklin Logistics and Franklin Enterprises and Franklin Fixtures, and it's all grown in the past decade. This has all come from nothing and less than nothing. So it's amazing what God can do. It's still growing. And then 3 years ago, well, in 2022, right out of COVID. So COVID happened, and Shakespeare and Company was doing a project in New York, and they lost their lease. They couldn't make it work with the COVID restrictions. So they abandoned their fixtures. And we're like, what are we going to do with these fixtures? And we've always thought about, bringing that kind of good thing to our community. And Dave was like, let's open it. Let's do it. And as we did it, we contacted Ashley Michael, and she had written an article about us with Franklin, and it had just really touched me because I'm like, how does she get it so deeply, what we're trying to do?
She's an amazing woman.
Oh, she is wonderful. And so she was popped in my head right away. And I said, Ashley, we're thinking about this bookshop. How would you like to manage and own it eventually? And she's produced her binder of 20 years where she had been thinking about a bookshop. I had no idea that was in her heart, but she's like, yes. And then before we opened, I went back to her and I said, what if we made it a full nonprofit, which would mean you'll never own it, but are you still? And she's like, anything that makes it successful. So all three of us decided to plant this in public soil and make it a full nonprofit so that it could belong to everybody and grow that way. And we've tried to protect it with a trust, and we're trying to build that so that it can be here for the next 200 years. And it partners Plenty Downtown Bookshop. So there's the three of us as founders, and now we have a 5-person executive board. But we do hundreds of events a year. We're able to gift books into the right place, and we're able to build community. There's such a need. Across America, we are at the 100-year low point in gathering. We've stopped believing that we need to go to church together or that we need to be in groups together. That's become scary. We see social media and we don't like what we're saying to each other. And we're like, people are scary. And when you look at a distance, people are, and the world is a scary place. But when you get up close, it's marvelous. I mean, people are wonderful to be with and around. And we're trying to give that experience, but we're at a 100-year low in gathering. And the average person today struggles for adult friendship. They may have 1-2 close friends, but 6 or 7 years ago, they would have had 3 or 4. So we have a kind of crisis in friendship too. Because people don't have a natural way to get to know each other. But gathering is kind of the thing, the thread to pull. And then there's reading. And how important, and I know how much you believe in reading.
Yes.
But we're at a literacy crisis. I like to say you think you don't know anybody who can't read, and you're right. You don't know somebody who can't read. You love somebody who can't read. You just don't know it. And or can't read well. And because you've got 3 and 12 and 10 adults that can't comfortably read a children's book to a child. Family reading is less than 2% of families read regularly. Less than 2, 98% don't. And yet the average 1-year-old has had 97% of the children have had a cell phone in their hands by the age of 1 and are able to do it. So these are some of the things that we're working to, and we love creating neighborliness and neighborhoods, and we're really inspired by that.
Yes,
Sorry,
y'all do. No, that's perfect. Y'all do an amazing job. And for like my personality, I'm one that really gets energized when I'm around people. So even just the word gathering makes me perk up. And the whole time I was like, what is the name of that book I read? But it was really talking about the importance of the table. And really talking about bringing people to the table, gathering with people, conversation, having a meal together. and just kind of bringing the art of that back. It might have been the art of the table. Now
Well,
that I'm thinking
there's
about
Priya
it.
Parker's The Art of Gathering,
Okay.
which maybe it talks about that. And I've written a book and am working on submitting it in the traditional publishing way right now, and have this amazing agent, and there's lots of good things happening around it. But one of the chapters is called The Lost Art of Passing the Potatoes, and it talks about. In a loving but teasing way, the chaos that ensued when I gave a dinner party for my, 16 of my family members and niece and nephews, and I served family style. And they needed to pass the food, and they were just apoplectic. They didn't know what to do. So some of them got up. They started going in different directions. They were reaching over people. Things were tilting. They were bumping into each other, and I was kind of watching. And some were sitting frozen. And I was like, "Oh, this is bad. This is not good." And I kind of called a truce, and we had to have some instruction on, do we pass left? Do we pass right? But the act of serving each other at the table is just so fundamental. It's been with us for hundreds of years, and it or thousands, whatever. But it just struck me that in fairness, this group of people has always gotten it plated, sacked, or buffet, and have rarely been at a table where they've been asked to pass and serve. And there is something so important, I think, that just in the literal table, but the figurative tables too. So yeah.
When my husband's a pastor, in our very first church, we lived in North Carolina when he was a senior pastor, there was an older woman in that church that really took a lot of us younger moms in.
Yeah.
Seth, my oldest, was just maybe one when I was going to this, but she took several of us in and mentored us, talked to us a lot about the importance of the table. And she helped it not seem overwhelming. Like when you host somebody, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't
Right.
have to be this way. It's really about the conversation. And that has really impacted me.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
So much to the point that I got my dinnerware basically to where it doesn't match on purpose.
Nice. Yeah.
And but it's also my personality. It's
Yeah.
kind of all over the place and
Yeah.
eclectic, and
Yeah.
and so, but I just will never forget that. Like she impacted me, and I was like, it doesn't have to be, because I had one grandmother who was lovely and she's dear to me, but she's very formal. So everything was, and I think in my mind I thought, oh, if I have people over, it has to just be this elegant, formal thing, which she could pull off, and that was
Yeah.
her. But then this lady just really helped me to think about, no, it's just really about the conversation and the people. And she showed us all kinds of fun ways to even do just like paper plates and paper napkins, just so that we didn't have to stress over it. But sorry, that just made me think of her.
No, it's really on point with exactly what Plenty is doing. In fact, the word plenty was inspired by my grandmother, and she wouldn't have known it in her lifetime, but her favorite hymn was "Room at the Cross for You." So she always was making room for people. Her back seat was full of goodies for people or meals for people. She fed everybody in a 50-mile radius that was sick. She worked as a teacher. She had a small dress shop. She had dances in her basement, but and she cooked these huge meals and every Sunday or for lots, but it was always at the table, and there was always plenty. There was always enough. And I love that word, that when I was thinking about what's a word that really describes my grandmother, Marie Swallows. She was in Baxter. Some people will know her, but she used silver platters because she hadn't grown up that way, but she had been taught and inspired by Dr. and Mrs. Harry Upperman, who kind of brought some of that elegance, and she wanted to bring that in Baxter and create this elevated feeling. But she always had plenty of time, plenty of bandwidth. She wasn't overwhelmed. And when I think about all the things that she did, that amazes me. But people settle down. We relax when there's plenty. There's plenty, and it doesn't feel like, it's not greed. It's not overwhelming. It's abundance, and in the best way. So that's really at the very heart of what plenty is. It's like a tree trunk, the bookshop, with lots of limbs, but this idea, the soil that it sits in, if you follow that metaphor, is plenty. It's really rich, and it's this idea of serving everybody.
Well, speaking of the gatherings that the Plenty does, that's really, I feel like, when my path really first started crossing with yours. And I think this was 3 years ago. I'm not sure. You had Jeffrey Rosen come in as an
Yes.
author, and y'all
Yes.
often bring authors in. And the book was Pursuit of Happiness.
Yes.
And I was really intrigued by him. One, I really like history, and knew who he was with the running the National Constitution Center. But the Pursuit of Happiness book really kind of crossed into a love of mine, which is classical learning. And he talked a lot about how the founding fathers really pursued education in a classical way.
Yeah.
And so it just really touched me, but I felt like that's kind of where our paths crossed, which kind of leads me to what I really want to talk about today is another exciting gathering, or multiple gatherings, that Plenty is fostering. So I don't know if you want to kind of talk about him coming here and then how this new gathering that's coming up for our community is happening.
There was Jeffrey Rosen, who was then CEO and leader of the National Constitution Center, came to Cookeville, and he came from Washington D.C. to Cookeville to do this event. And for us, it was our biggest event yet for Plenty. And there were, I don't know, a couple hundred people, 150 people. There were a lot of people in the room, coming from a lot of different parts of our community, and talking about these virtues and core ideals and the pursuit of happiness. And it was so special. And I've written about it because I felt it, he felt it. And that's an important piece. He didn't sit, he stood and talked to every person that came through the line. And he talked deeply with each person. He heard Cookeville, he heard us. And nobody was like looking on their phones. People were talking with each other. It was just such a special,
It was
rainy Tuesday, I think. But anyway, he was moved by that, and he went to a philanthropy group called Emerson Collective, and he said, I'd like to do more of this. What happened in Cookeville is something I think is special, and I think I'd like to do more. And so they provided some grants, and we applied for one of them and said, make it up. What do you want to do related to the Constitution in the 250th year? And so my idea was, I want a 250 person study of the Constitution, and 100 adults, 100 children, and 50 leaders is kind of the framework in my head. And the proposal that I put forward is what we're beginning now here in August, and there's still time to participate. So that we would meet monthly, again, around a table, perhaps in a living room, around a table, 10 or so people at a time, a cohort, and month by month look at the Constitution in some way. So I've got a framework that people can follow, which starts with, like, what are the articles and what's the structure of it, and what can it do? Not what should it do, but what can it do? And then we also have trivia games with it. We have a Civic Nation game. Some people are doing it. There's a book of essays, and doing it as a study of those essays in the book that both Jeffrey Rosen and Yuval Levin and some others have written, Walter Isaacson, some other familiar names for those who like this kind of stuff. But I just thought it was so exciting to think about studying. I like the same things you do. Where did these source documents come from? Where did those ideas come from? And what were they trying to do? And I just find such empowerment in being rooted in that. Our world can be so noisy and can be so frustrating sometimes, and to center on that and to go back and go like, okay, that's fun. It really feels fun. So I've been excited. We've got about 30 leaders right now, and I said 250, but it's not really limited to that. So if we grow bigger than that, that's fine. And so we're going to meet monthly, about an hour and a half a month. And then in December 1st is a culminating event with Jeffrey Rosen coming back. And he's so excited. And then we said, you could have any speaker you want, and they would pay for it. And I said, the name that was given to me was Yuval Levin, and nobody knows his name, but he's really famous in a lot of circles, and he's written a lot of books. He wrote one called Book Built to Last. As the Ronald Reagan Public Library wanted him for a speaker this year, and they said, I'm sorry, he's booked in Cookeville.
Wow.
So he is at this moment the most in demand of those those speakers, those scholars, and it's really exciting to have him here in Cookeville.
Yes.
And so by the time he gets here, I'd like us to know who he is,
Yeah.
and who Jeffrey Rosen is, and what they've written, and what we can take of that. There was a Baptist minister one time, very retired, I guess. He was a big, tall man from Mississippi, and I gave a speech once, and half of the room gave a standing ovation, and half of the room stayed seated and didn't appear to be clapping at all. And I don't even remember what I was talking about, but I asked him what he thought, and he said, I wouldn't worry about that. Anything is like eating a piece of chicken. You take the meat, you throw the bones over your shoulder. So I think that's what this study is. You take the meat that you need, and if there's bones, you throw them over your shoulder. But where's the meat for you?
Yeah.
And for everybody. So I'm super excited. We've got folks coming from the homeschool community, from the Highland Rim, from classical conversations. We've got, and Tabitha Mira is leading some from Peachtree. We've got the public school involved, and they're doing it. So the children piece is going to be, I think, covered well. We've got folks like Judge Carolyn Knight. So she knows, I would assume, a lot about the Constitution. And I was talking to another judge, and he was interested. And I said, "Don't you know the Constitution?" And he said, "No, not really." I know one or two, but it's really interesting. But then there are lots of people who are like, "I know nothing." And that's really a great place to start, because I know nothing, and I'd like to learn something.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And when you did the training for the leaders, which I'm excited to be leading a group or two.
Yeah.
Or three.
Maybe three. Yeah.
I've got some other adults, though, that said they
Yeah.
would step in and maybe help
Yeah.
lead, too. So, but when we came together just to kind of train for what this looks like, and I mentioned to you that day, but it was so interesting because the training even was kind of helping us say, like, how
So
do you
good.
feel about these things? When you read these things in the Constitution, or you read this statement, how do you feel? And everybody in the room had different thoughts about it.
Yeah.
And some felt strongly about some, and some didn't feel strongly,
Yeah.
about certain things. And that training was so good for me, just to remember and to relax, because like you said, this world we live in is messy. But it's okay for there to be tension. So I call it like live in the tension, because tension stretches us. You and I may not agree wholeheartedly on something, but the fact that I can listen to you, and there might be, when I say tension, I don't mean like arguing. I just mean like we're wrestling with these ideas, and it's really good for me to hear what you have to say. And then it's really good for you to hear what I have to say. And I think it's okay to live in that tension.
It's really interesting, and I loved that you said that. And that was, we had the National Constitution folks came, and they facilitated a morning, and I remember the word liberty that they had a phrase, and it's like, liberty, how do you define it? And then we plotted our own, is it more this or more that? And during the course of even the morning, we were invited to go and see if our own definitions changed. And mine did. It changed a couple of times, just as I had opportunity to think about it. And it was Yuval Levin that said that the tension gives the system the balance, and that's the tension is by design. Somebody was telling me, we were having a conversation this week about leadership, and someone was saying, I see this thing that needs fixing, and it didn't get fixed very fast. It didn't get fixed, as quickly as I'd like it to get fixed. And I was thinking, I'm like, well, that's our whole system. And a lot of times, and that was in an organization, but it's like, you're not seeing that, but you're also not seeing that that's 5-6 other things that need adjusting in the system in order to fix that one thing you saw. And it may be happening at a breakneck speed in the background, but you don't see that middle. And so to understand that the tension and the slowness is part of the design, and part of what we need is really interesting. I was really challenged in that meeting, and I'm looking forward to learning myself. All this is for me, really. I'm just really wanting because I want to learn. They said how to frame a constitutional question, and how that's different than a political question or an opinion question. It's not should people be allowed to blah blah. It's a constitutional question. And I think if we can learn to structure our conversation and our questions that way, we have a path to pursuing them, which is really interesting. So I'm excited about, I love dialogue. My first sentence was let's talk. So it's and I'm a developmental psychologist, so I'm always looking for how dissonance, that tension, can be productive. We'd all still be crawling if we hadn't gotten really frustrated at some point, and started walking around, but, it gives us that dissonance. And, from your children, if you give them everything easily, they don't grow,
Right.
It's the struggle. We're seeing that with AI and people looking things up and kind of not exercising that
that
brain
part of their
part.
brain.
Yeah. So this is good brain exercise. This is good civic exercise. This is good family exercise. It's going to be a good time. And I think that may surprise some people, but I've been really probably emboldened by how many people have said, "Oh, that sounds so cool." So I feel like it's like the coolest ticket in town.
Yes, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah,
And I think it's just going to enhance the gatherings, which
Yeah.
is going to enhance conversation and prayerfully unity.
Yeah.
Even if we don't all share the same ideas, unity doesn't mean that I'm going to do exactly, or believe exactly. I think it just causes us to listen
Yeah.
and to learn from others and formulate our thoughts. And like you said, ask good questions.
Yeah.
We don't have to ask pointed questions or, I mean, there's just so many
Well,
things. But
yeah.
I'm excited about it being about the Constitution because, man, that's our founding document.
Founding
And it's
document.
such a special time to do it right now at the
Yeah.
250th birthday.
And it's just like studying the Bible or any rich text, that's been around. There's so many layers to it. There's so much to know and so much to understand, and to understand, for me to go like, oh, the USA is a corporation. In fact, we are the first corporation. And then you have cities and states that are incorporated. They're also corporations. They also are, and then what we call corporations and businesses are just little bitty extensions of that structure. And I didn't understand that before. I'm like, okay, so if we're a corporation, where are our bylaws? What are our things? What are our guiding principles? And how do we function? And this kind of answers that. It's like, this is how this company is supposed to work.
Yeah, yeah.
With the branches and the stuff. It's really interesting. And I think that gives people just such a different place to have a conversation. And what happened that day, 3 years ago, it's hard to believe it's been that long, that Jeffrey Rosen experienced, I experienced it too. It was something special. And I think this is going to be that too.
Yes, I'm excited. Well, one last question, like how has your faith just played a role in all of these projects and hats that you wear?
Well, that is a long question, but I'll try to make a short answer. When Dave and I started down this road of trying to do what we're doing, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the money, we didn't have anything, and then there were health difficulties, and there were what God has taught us. What I've learned is that His yoke is easy, His burden is light. I'm not doing any of this. God is growing me every step of the way, and my faith has really deepened and gotten more intimate. And I think I hear better right now. I just feel so incredibly grateful. So Dave and I begin every day with we read Jesus Calling, we read Stoic Wisdom, we read book of quotes, we read a poem, and we pray, and that's the beginning of our day. And then we have a business meeting of talking, and that has, we're just so grateful for all the doors that are opening, for all the things. I couldn't have imagined the National Constitution Center being interested in us. And part of the study, they've invited us to say we want to talk with the Supreme Court justices, or we want to talk with, access, making the world very small and access to things. I got an invitation just this week that's extraordinary, that to go speak about what's happening with Plenty. And I've been getting lots of those invitations, and it's interesting to watch God work and see what can happen with this little bitty thing. But what I know for sure is that none of it's not about me. It's not, or us. It's not, it's for me, but not in the way that you might think. It's for my growth and for the growth of my faith, because and that I'm not in charge, but I get to help be part of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for just taking the time out of your busy schedule just to come chat with me.
Well,
and
thank you for the invitation, and thank you for your leadership in this Constitution study. I'm just so excited.
Me too.
And for your willingness to run for public office and to participate in this way. That's it. You've put yourself out there in a important way and a hard way, and I really admire everybody who has done that. Because that's extraordinary in this day and age. So,
well, thank you. Well, we appreciate you joining us today on the Ordinary Brave podcast, and we hope that it'll inspire you. And if they're interested in maybe jumping in on a cohort, do they just reach out to Plenty? What's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. If you are interested, you can email events@plentybookshop.org, or you can go on plentybookshop.org and you can look on the events and you can click on it and send something right there. You can go by Plenty Bookshop, which is on 48 West Broad, downtown, and there's QR codes and other things. This is exactly the right time to participate. If you don't have a cohort or know anybody, we can put you into a cohort. You can form a cohort. You'll be given materials and guided, and we're here to guide that process. It's not a huge commitment lift, but hopefully enough to be meaningful and to give meaningful opportunities for transformation and learning. And it's going to be fun. So yeah. Please join.
It's great. Well, thank you again for listening. Please check out what Plenty is doing. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, we ask that you like and share the podcast. Have a great day.